Today I'm trying out the new L'Oreal Nude Magique Eau De Teint, I think that's how you say it, foundation, and this is quite new in the UK and I've seen this quite a lot and I've seen a few reviews and people have been saying it's good and also some people have been saying it's bad, and because I have combo to oily skin I do feel like it might be really good for my skin. I do have sort of like a dry skin, then I also have a very oily T-zone if you don't already know, and this really drew me to it because I love my Rimmel Wake Me Up foundation and this looked pretty much the same, and if you can hear, it's quite loud and very liquidy, so I'm really curious to see how this is going to go because at the moment I'm using my full coverage foundations because my skin is really bad and breaking out and very red, so I just wanted to try something that was a little bit lighter on my skin just to see if it works as well. I purchased this from my local Superdrug store and it was on offer for only £5, so I believe it was half price, and as soon as I saw that it was £5 I was like, I have to try it. It's so cheap and it's on offer and it's hardly ever on offer as well, and the colour that I chose is 100 Porcelain because I have the lightest skin in the world and this was the lightest shade that they did. But as you can see, it does look a little bit too orange for my skin. This is the lightest shade, and with Porcelain it has to be very light, so I'm hoping that this is actually going to be the correct shade for my skin. It says on the back that the directions for use are shake well before use and apply a drop to your finger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be shaking this, applying a drop to my finger, and then I'm going to be buffing this in with my Real Techniques Expert Face Brush because I think that using my hands just doesn't seem sanitary enough, so with a brush it normally gives me a little bit more of a full coverage foundation look. So it says on the website, a new sensation with a lighter than water formula for non-greasy zero makeup feel, a new finish, perfect looking nude finish for even smoother, healthier looking complexion and enhanced skin texture. And it says it has ultra light micropigments, non-greasy feel, and just a few drops are needed. So I'm guessing I'm not going to need a lot of this foundation. I'm guessing it's going to go pretty well on the skin, and also I wanted to have sort of like a light texture feel as well. I didn't want something that was too heavy, and I like things for summer as well that aren't very heavy, that are light, and this looks like it might be good for summer. So it also has SPF 18, which means that it's good for if you go out in the sunlight. So let's see how this is going to look. Now I haven't tried this out before, so I'm just going to shake it and open it up and see what the smell is. Now it looks a lot thicker than I thought it would. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks a little bit thicker. It doesn't really smell of anything, so let's see how this is going to go. So I've just tipped it upside down. I'm just going to put a drop on my face. And I'm just going to move my hair out of my eyes because I don't really want to get loads of foundation in my hair because it looks absolutely horrible. So I'm just going to put another drop on my finger, and I'm also going to pop this on my face, and it looks a little bit messy because I have another drop on another one of my fingers. So I'm just going to put about 3 drops on, and I'm just going to do one side of my face as well. And I do have a lot of redness and I do have a lot of acne, so let's see how this goes. Okay, so I'll put that all on and I'm just going to buff this in. Give a flawless coverage, but I don't think it's that thick. It looks very light. It doesn't even look like I've got anything on my skin. It hasn't covered anything else up, so I'm going to put another couple of drops on my skin to see how it works. And then I'm going to put one on this joint spot here. Okay. Okay, so I've now put 8 drops on this side of my face and I have nothing on this side, and I don't feel like I can see much difference at all. It hasn't really covered up the redness, it hasn't really covered up the acne either. I don't think it's done anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other side of my face, but I'm going to use my hands to put it on just to see if it looks any better. This time I'm going to use my hands to buff it into my skin, see if that looks any better because that's what they recommend. So I don't really feel like that it looks any different to using the brush really. So this is what it looks like on my skin with 2 layers, and I don't feel like I'm that impressed at all with it. It hasn't covered up the redness on my chin. It's covered up the redness really on my cheeks and my nose and my head, but the blemishes are really, really visible. I'm not really sure if I like it. One thing I did forget to say is that this is only 20 millilitres, which is 10 millilitres smaller than a normal drugstore foundation. So it's now 12:16 PM and I'm going to come back in a little bit after I've finished off all of my makeup. Bye! Hi guys, so I just finished my makeup and it's now 12:49 PM, so it's taken me about half an hour. The first thing that I've noticed is that it really accentuates my pores very, very badly. All on here, it's very vibrant, and also it can look a little bit cakey and it looks a little bit drying as well. And I put on a very heavy moisturiser beforehand just to make sure that my skin didn't look cakey. It does look quite dry and it looks a tiny bit patchy on some parts of my face, especially when you can see the redness coming out. So I'm going to be back in a couple of hours to give you another update, and I will see you in a bit. Bye! Hi guys, so I'm back and it's now 6:30 PM, so I've had this on for over 5.5 hours, so it's been nearly 6 hours I've had this foundation on, and I feel like I have a good review of this foundation. So the first thing is, I have noticed that it has come off of my forehead. My forehead is pretty blotchy, which to be honest isn't really a surprise because a lot of foundation just pretty much slide off my face. The only one that doesn't is the Estee Lauder Double Wear foundation. I did think that this one was going to be a lot like my Wake Me Up foundation by Rimmel, but it just turns out that it's not really like that. I do sort of prefer the Rimmel Wake Me Up foundation, and it seemed like it had the same traits as it did on the back of the bottle when I read about it. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can see exactly what it looks like. So as you can see, it's pretty matte all around the face, but then obviously the forehead is pretty blotchy and shiny, and I can feel it being really shiny as well and sort of coming off my skin. It does feel very oily, but other than that it does look exactly the same as when I first put it on. So onto the good points and the bad points, and the first good thing is that I noticed that it blended very, very well when I used my hands, and also when I used the brush it tended to blend and build very well, so it's a very buildable coverage. But the only thing that I noticed is that the coverage is not that good, especially if you have acne or if you have red skin as well. Another good thing that I noticed is that it's matte when it's dry, so if you have slightly oily skin or if you have combo skin, it's really good for that, but it's probably not that good if you do have very, very dry skin on the rest of your face. And also it feels really nice and soft and smooth when you touch it as well. It has a little bit of a dewy finish when you feel it, but I don't know if that's just my skin, but it does feel really good, and it still does look exactly the same as when I first put it on, which is great. So now on to the bad points. There are quite a lot of bad points about this foundation that I've noticed. First one is that it doesn't cover blemishes, and also it doesn't cover redness. I have so many blemishes and so much redness all over my skin, and it just didn't seem to cover that even with 3 layers on my skin. It just didn't want to work. You do need a lot of product for this foundation as well. I did notice that with normal foundations I only have to use 1 or 1.5 pumps. With this I needed a lot of it, and it doesn't really seem very sanitary when you have to be putting your fingers over it and then tilting it up and then using your hands to try and buff it all into your skin. It's just not that good. And also you only get 1/3 of the size of the bottle of what you would of a normal foundation at the drugstore or even a high-end foundation, so you don't get as much product, but you do need to use a lot of the product anyway, which I think is a bit weird because it doesn't really seem to go hand in hand with it all. Another thing I've noticed is that it can look very cakey. Certain areas of my skin it did look cakey on them, and also it made my pores stand out a lot more. My pores were worse, but it wasn't as bad as when I have my Kat Von D Lock-It Tattoo foundation on. That just pretty much draws out my pores and looks crazy. This is okay. It sort of minimises them more than it does with the Kat Von D, but you can still really tell that they're there, and also it doesn't cover up the under eye circles as well. I needed to use a lot of concealer for that. It is a very light coverage. It's also good and it's also bad. It's good if you have very, very good skin, but if you have skin like myself then it's definitely not good, and it just won't cover anything up. And also with the colour being porcelain, I didn't really think that it was porcelain. It looked more like ivory to me because it was very, very yellow, and my skin always suits porcelain, and this just was not good, and it just looked very, very yellow on my skin, and it was quite hard to try and make it match my neck because it really didn't. Even with using concealer and a little bit of powder, it just didn't want to work and match my skin. Another thing is that it's very runny and that the coverage isn't even at all. Honestly, I would not be able to put this on the top of my hand and then use a brush to build it in because it's that runny. It's literally like water, and it just didn't blend very well. It was very buildable. It blended well at the beginning, but it just sort of left blotches on my skin. When I looked in the mirror by the window, it just tended to have a random yellow blotch right here, which was not that good, when all of my other foundations tend to blend really well and this one just didn't. It also transfers, which isn't good if you do tend to have your phone by your ear all the time. And the last thing is that it's not very good for my oily forehead because it did come off and it's very, very blotchy on there, and you can see all of my redness, which isn't good. So my overall opinion of this foundation is that I think it's okay. It would be a lot better if I didn't have blemishes or redness on my skin, and also if I didn't have a very, very oily forehead, it would be really good. It works on the rest of my skin, but like I said, my forehead's just not that good. So I definitely recommend that you try this if you don't really have many problems on your skin and you don't have really large pores and it's not super, super oily. It will work for you. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and make sure that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye!